With modern advances in steel manufacturing, do traditional techniques like laminated blades even matter anymore? We're going to answer all that and more in today's episode of Knife AQ, episode 203 of the series where I answer all your questions, sharp or dull. Hey everyone, David C. Anderson from the KnifeCenter here, coming at you from the KnifeCenter. Still, actually. And that's Thomas behind the camera, still, as well.
Yep.
Sounding a little better, but that's okay.
Well, I'm better. I just sound like a 4-pack-a-day smoker.
If you're new to this series, what we do is we take your questions, not the other way around. When you drop them in the comments, we go through and pick a few out for future episodes. So that's what you got to do if you yourself have a question. First one today comes from Greg Berry. I used to hear about laminated steel blades, but don't seem to anymore, as in hard steel core with softer steel outer layers for toughness. Did super steels kill off laminated blades? I would say to a certain extent, sort of. It doesn't mean they're obsolete and doesn't mean we don't see some still, but it's definitely not where the big thrust of knife enthusiasm today is. Like people who are seeking out high-performance steels are seeking out high-performance powder metallurgy steels as opposed to traditional San-Mai style blades, or as Cold Steel, the company that kind of popularized this construction technique in the North American market, at least, by taking centuries-old Japanese traditions and bringing it to the States and calling it San-Mai, which I'm going to say is a roughening up, ruining of the traditional pronunciation, which I mentioned before. But you can see that that technique here on this Cold Steel Master Tanto, which Tanto is also a more traditional pronunciation. Don't come at me in the comments. This is a VG10 San-Mai blade. You can actually see the line right behind the edge here where you transition from that core steel, in this case VG10, into the outer layers. Now I actually don't have the spec of what steel they are using in the outer layers. Sometimes it can be the same steel. And through heat treatment processes as they're bonded together and before they're bonded together, you can get different hardnesses. But typically you would see it with different steels on the outer layers. I have an old Mora, Mora Classic with a triple laminated blade. They actually use the same steels in all three layers too, I think. I digress. Yeah, so the idea being, you exactly spelled it out. You're going to get a softer or not necessarily that much softer, but a steel that's going to exhibit more toughness than the core steel at the final target that you heat treat it. Allows you to improve the quality of the core steel and stretch that material longer. That's where you would see it in traditional knife making, sword making methods. Really, you used to see this in like old European axes too, where the actual bit, they would have the better quality, higher carbon steel right there at the bit, and it would be wrapped around. It would be softer steel, it would be more impact resistant, and that more refined, better quality steel was harder to come by, so you can make it last longer that way. That being said, modern powder steels can often, equal or outperform the toughness you would get from a triple laminated traditional steel blade, while also getting better edge retention. But you still can get super steel core laminated blades these days. They're few and far between, but they do exist. One right here, I've got two to show you, would be this special version of the Feldknieven F1, which has a 3G core blade. 3G is not the toughest steel as I understand it, but it is going to give you greater edge retention than the base VG10 models that you get with the standard Feldknieven laminated blades. And you get some of that toughness and that strength back from the outer cladding, the clad layers. And F1 is a classic knife too. This special edition one with the Swedish Air Force regalia, the Gripen right there, is like $522. So it's a bit more expensive when you get into these higher end, powder metallurgy core blades. This one's even more expensive because it's a special edition. Another one, this is a good example right here of those outer layers aren't always designed for toughness. Oftentimes you would see it that way, but the outer layers are intended to complement or fill in the gaps where the center layer lacks. You can kind of think of it that way too. This KnifeCenter exclusive Ladybug 3 from Spyderco has a HAP 40 core, and that is a powder metal steel. It is very tough. It has good edge retention as well, but it is not a particularly stainless steel. In fact, it's not a stainless steel at all. So the outer cladding on this blade is a stainless steel. So you're protecting more of that blade from, premature corrosion. You do see a little bit of the edge, of course, right there. Again, you can see that line going through right there, but it's complementing what you see inside at the center core. Not always for toughness. These are still available too, I should say. The other area where you still do see, and this is probably the most common in today's market, where you see these laminated blades with 2 outer layers and a center core. Although those 2 outer layers are comprised oftentimes of very many layers, and that is with something like this Makusta right here, which is the model, let me get it right, this is the MC18D, the classic wave. You have a center core of VG10, like, in fact, that cold steel, but the outer layers are Damascus, which in modern Damascus is laminated steel, laminated with many layers, which often complement each other in their characteristics. So this blade was created by having the sheet of VG10 and 2 sheets of this already laminated Damascus steel and putting it together like a standard triple laminated blade. You see this a lot in kitchen knives too, especially some of the fancier Japanese style kitchen knives. The outer Damascus here is not really a performance-driven decision. It's more aesthetics because it looks cool. Wouldn't you agree? And you can get it with a lighter texture like this, or you can go darker. I think Civivi's Damascus that they're using these days is particularly striking when they give it this dark stone-washed finish, such as on this Civivi yonder right here. And they're using a 10CR core material on these, which is not too far off from VG10 in performance. So really cool looking stuff, especially with and this one has a few less layers than some of the versions they've done. Just looks really, really cool. Actually, it might not have that many fewer layers, but it's a very thinner blade, so it may appear that there's fewer layers. But anyway, hope that helps. Lets you know what laminated blades are if you didn't before. Now you should know something, so that's pretty cool. Now we come to our measured once, cut twice segment, where we take a second slice at some previously answered questions. 2 weekends ago, we talked about finger choils on knives and whether they were good or bad. I shared some of my opinions on it, and you folks shared a lot of your opinions in the comments too. And I want to bring to light a couple of those. The first one is from John P. Says, what's the Spyderco finger choil technically called if it's not a choil? This is what he's talking about right here. Spyderco calls this a finger choil, but I sort of contend that because this arced area doesn't actually intersect the sharpened edge, you can't technically call it a choil. And that's an area where, marketing in the knife industry can kind of, shortcut some corners and create kind of new expectations, even if it's not entirely right. For example, this grind right here is a hollow grind, but some people say, that's a saber grind. Well, saber grinds is just a height thing. It can be hollow or flat. San-Mai, that's another marketing distortion. But anyway, I'm not gonna get mad at Spyderco for calling it a finger choil. I think when they started using this term, the knife hobbyist niche as a whole probably wasn't thinking about choils as much as we are nowadays. I could be wildly wrong about that. But anyway, what should, internally at least, just to satisfy myself, what should we call this if it's not a choil of any sort? So really, it's just this arc or this parabola on the ricasso area of the blade and a little bit into the handle in this case. Well, that's not always the case with all quote-unquote finger choils. We could call it an arched ricasso or a grooved ricasso, ricasso arc. Finger choil is a lot snappier than any of those things, so you can see why they might have gone with something like that. I don't know. What would you folks call this if finger choil is not allowed? What should we call this area? The forward index grip, but you could call that, I could describe any number of things that aren't this too, so.
I'm gonna go with Freddy.
Freddy? Sure, you've been sick. I'll let you have it. The next user here, am I getting sick?
I don't know.
I hope not. Has one of my favorite usernames has ever appeared on this channel. A Pox on Usernames asks, or says, I was trying to decide what my opinion on finger choils is, and I went to my, admittedly, not as large as I would like, knife collection, and lo and behold, I don't have a single knife with a finger choil. I have large knives like the SC5 and machetes, and many small knives. I seem to always get the mini version of knives. I like the normal size. I seem to get mini versions of the knives. I like normal size. Sorry, whew. Maybe I'm getting sick. But no choils. So I don't know if I don't like them and just instinctively avoid them, or if I've just never really given them a chance. So, what knife should I get to give choils a chance to impress? Finger choils. So my personal opinion, which I shared in that video, was I like the utility of finger choils on smaller knives and on larger knives, but that in-between area I would usually prefer personally not to have them. So in that regard, I'm going to stick to folders here instead of showing you some fixed blades. I showed a couple in that video that had some finger choils, but for a larger folder where the finger choil to me has some utility is this knife right here, the Spyderco Military. Because it's a long blade. I mean, it's like 4 inches. Let me get the exact spec here. Well, our website says 4 inches, so it's a 4-inch blade. Shall we, I don't have my ruler here. It must be at my desk. Anyway, big 4-inch blade. So for a folder, that's a lot. So to accommodate a 4-inch blade in a folder, you need an even longer handle. I mean, you can see how much grip I have on this handle and still have space in front and back. So the finger choil there adds a little bit of grip without taking up too much of the sharpened edge here. You would gain, if you were able to get rid of that, you might gain a little bit, but it's not a dramatic thing. The reason why the Military 2 works a little bit for me in terms of this finger choil argument is you can choke up into that area and you still have a good amount of solid reach here, and you get the finer control you need, the better precision in the tip perhaps. But then when you choke back all the way back here, well, standard grip works too. But the reason that I like it here is you've got that extra handle length and you've got a significant downward cant to the handle. And that allows you to get both extra reach and a really nice behavior when you're working on any kind of surface, whether you're using it in a work scenario or craft scenario, or Seth V, my occasional co-host here, has used the Military family, admittedly the Military 1, not the 2, as a food prep knife quite extensively. And the way you hold this when you're on top of a cutting board, you're able to engage all this slicing belly right here on a cutting board, which is a really satisfying thing. But then when you want to get up close and personal, you can still do that and do a standard grip right here and have almost 4 inches of reach. That is a big folder where I don't mind a finger choil, and in fact, kind of like it. As for a smaller knife, we're going to stick with Spyderco here. The Lil Native is really nice, and I would actually suggest maybe take a look at the the slip joint version of the Lil Native. These come in like $160, S30V blade, under 2.5 inches. I have one of these knives personally, and it is my default fallback knife in a way. It is a knife I know I can take literally just about anywhere if I'm going traveling, provided I'm able to have a knife in any certain situation, because the 2.5-inch blade is way under most blade length limits, and it's non-locking, which in the States is less of an issue, but other markets could be a little different. The finger choil here not only allows you to have that small blade, it allows you to have a full gripping handle as well, which is quite nice. And on a slip joint like this, that finger choil provides safety. No lock. So if that blade does kind of pop loose as you're using it, your finger's going to be there to prevent it from moving further, which is a really nice bit of peace of mind if you're constrained to a non-locking knife. That is a nice thing. So you've got a small knife, you've got a non-locking knife. The choil gives you safety and it gives you a full grip. I mean, I have slightly larger than average hands, and I've got a full grip on there. And I'm not touching the edge either because of the way Spyderco does their finger choils. So that is a nice thing. If you want to lock, sure, go with any of the other Lil Natives because the safety thing doesn't come into the equation, but it's still a nice platform. The Dragonfly is another classic in this regard, but I really like the feel of the Lil Natives. This version right here has the compression lock, which is nice. Spy 27 blade steel. And that's the cool thing about trying out either of these, more so on the military too, but with both of them, there's plenty of choices out there. So the platform works and you've got a few options to choose from. Hope that helps. Next question, or sorry, not a question yet. We're Damyr's Buried Treasure. We're on the letter U today. Thanks to his question several episodes ago, we've been going through the alphabet and showing a brand that we've never showed on the channel before. That we have never shown on the channel before. Today is some American-made knives, actually. Some very affordably priced American-made items, Utica. Now, the reason Utica is able to do what they do in the U.S. at the prices where they sell is they've been doing these knives for a long time. They've kind of like paid off the cost of developing them, and they just keep them going. This is a classic example of the electrician's knife. A slip joint, well, half of it's a slip joint. Well, they're both slip joints. It's half locking as well. This is about $37. You've got a standard pen blade. The grease is extra. Actually, the grease comes with it. That's bonus. Standard simple stainless steel blade. I don't even have the formulation of it here, but simple spear point blade. Delrin handles on this. Very old school feeling. And then the other blade, which makes it the electrician's blade, you've got a locking blade with a blunt tip, like a scraping or prying tip right there. And the lock is going to be very nice for that prying, of course. You could probably sharpen that up into chisel formation if you wish. The more interesting thing, or the most interesting thing of theirs that we carry actually, is this multi-tool called the Mini Master. 16 functions here, $35. Very, very compact, as you can see. You've got, for one thing, a bottle opener right there. That now meets the legal definition of multi-tool, which is nice. 3 hex wrench sizes, cutouts on that section right there. And this is just folded steel. It's not super strong in terms of like hardcore usage, but might be able to get some little things done with it. And then all of the implements on the inside here are easy to access. There is a small keyring attachment loop there. So if you want to add a keyring onto this and carry it on your keys, very easy to do. You got tweezers, you've got a couple flatheads, you've got a 2D Phillips, scissors, nail file, and a small blade. Non-locking as well, which is interesting given what we were just talking about. But the safety here is provided. As you can see, these tools clump a little bit as I'm getting them out. The rest of the handle itself gives you safety in this case. The handle's going to wedge whatever tool you have open, won't be able to close past that. So it's a pretty neat little item. Again, it feels maybe a generation or two out of date or slightly older, but the price is decent and the form factor, I think, is pretty cool. All right, now we come to the lightning round for today. Fernando Yokota says, question, steel A holds the edge twice longer than steel B, but takes twice the time to sharpen. At the end of the day, you spent the same amount of time sharpening both, but paid twice the price for A. What's the advantage? Longer intervals between sharpening. Some people would rather sit down once and sharpen a little bit longer as opposed to having to like strop or maintain it more every couple of days. Neither one's wrong. Just do whatever suits your preference, I would say. Verse 6 GLX 96.
Volkswagen.
I was about to say a VR6. Wait, engine. Yes, that is. Here I thought it was just more nonsense syllables, and this person actually put some time and thought into their username, and I just butchered it.
Nice job.
Apologies.
Lightning round, David.
Good point. Interesting idea for a topic. Could you guys do a video on why bearings are not necessary? My personal opinion. I will take washers over bearings any day for numerous reasons. I don't think action is a valid argument for bearings. because many knives with washers have flawless action. Bearings add extra cost, but not much benefit. I would say some people like the feel of ball bearing action over washers, so even if you don't, which is fine, doesn't mean it's not valid. Example here, the Military 2. Nice action on washers. If you're wondering what the difference in feel is, it's subtle, but like I always say, washers have kind of like a buttery feel to them, whereas good ball bearings have more of a glassy feel to them. Subtle distinctions, but there is a difference you can feel in hand. I would argue maybe your thing, bearings adding extra cost is not necessarily the case nowadays. You can get some very, very cheap knives with ball bearings nowadays. And the reason you see that is it's easier to get flawless action with ball bearings than it is with washers. And that makes production easier and faster, which means they can make more of a thing and make more money. So it might not actually be a cost savings thing to go with washers anymore. Mileage may vary. And this is not true with every knife out there, of course, but generally speaking, washers are easier to tune up for that kind of action than ball bearings are easier to tune up for that kind of action and assembly processes than washers. Different knives, different factories may vary a little bit, but it's a good broad stroke thing that I have heard. Anyway, we come now to our final question of the day, which is in fact our most seriousest question of the day, which comes from Blade Bro EDC. MSQ, hey DCA, I have a problem. My bedroom used to be where I keep my knife collection, but recently I find myself sleeping in my knife room. Can this mean my collection is too big? Absolutely not. You don't have a problem. Actually, the only problem you have is your sleeping arrangement, your sleeping furniture, shall we say. That big bed you're sleeping on right now, that takes up way too much room that could be taken up with more knives. What you need to do, get yourself a couple of big, strong industrial eye hooks and some climbing rated carabiners and a hammock. And you don't have to go crazy on the hammock. This Prometheus Design Works solo hammock right here is about $42. It comes with some nice straps. And elevate yourself above the ground. Think about how high you could go, how close to the ceiling you could get. Think about how many knives you could stack up then at that point, right? And then if you run out of room, the best thing about this is it's easy to move. Move it into another room, start another knife room. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today, folks. Keep your questions coming. Keep your most seriousest questions coming as well. Please and thank you. Let me know what you thought in the comments. If you got some alternate suggestions or answers, drop them below. If you have questions to ask, drop them below in the comments section as well. And to get your hands on any of these knives, check out the links in the description, which will take you to KnifeCenter.com. And don't forget about our long-running Knife Rewards program, because the least thing we can do when you buy one of our knives today is give you some free money to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center, signing off. That's Thomas behind the camera, too. See you next time.
Just secure that hammock to some studs.
Beams. Studs are in walls, right? Beams.
Or that.
Or that. Safety first.